the Nintendo Switch is on its way to become Nintendo's second or even best-selling home console of all time, and President of Nintendo, Shuntaro Furukawa, has stated that the current goal is to extend the life of the system as far as possible, and in the process exploring state-of-the-art technology. This makes sense, as there's no guarantee that the successor of the Switch will be as successful. You don't have to look further than the disaster that was the Wii U after Wii to realize that. No doubt, Nintendo will not fall from 100 million to 16 again, but to avoid the risk of a significant fall in the number of Nintendo console owners anytime soon, the safest bet is to prolong the life of your current record-breaking system, possibly by offering a boost that might bring the Switch to upscaled 4K and 1080p 60 frames per second for the most demanding first-party games. And it appears that Nintendo might have found a solution from the strategy they applied to the previous handheld, the 3DS. You see, when the Nintendo 3DS launched in 2011, a cheaper model without 3D and foldable screen, the 2DS, was released 2 years after in 2013. Then 2 years later, on February 13, 2015, the top model, new Nintendo 3DS, was released. Though, let's stop there for a minute, since when that is said, new Nintendo 3DS actually launched before in Japan than the rest of the world, in October 2014. But in return, the 2DS didn't release in Japan until 2016 for the 20th anniversary of Pokémon Red and Green. In other words, the new Nintendo 3DS was the first revision and upgrade to the 3DS in Japan. But for Europe and North America, almost exactly 2 years after the new 3DS, in 2017, the Nintendo Switch hybrid TV and handheld system was launched. Finally, 2 years later, in 2019, the handheld-only Nintendo Switch Lite was released. Now, as we will go over through this video, we're hearing reports which point that Nintendo will, like they did during the Nintendo 3DS years, launch a top model version of the current system, likely in 2021. 4 years after the launch of the base model system and 2 years after the launch of the cheaper, limited entry model. An unbroken 2-year pattern which will last for a decade come 2021 and which goes perfectly together with no new Nintendo Switch models throughout 2020 as confirmed by the president of Nintendo Shuntaro Furukawa, and just in time to avoid revealing it before the Xbox Series S and X and PlayStation 5 are out and spoiling the holiday sales for the base model Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch Lite. It speaks for itself. Nintendo doesn't want to hurt their holiday sales, as the Switch has never sold better than in 2020 thanks to Animal Crossing New Horizons and a massive library of existing games. Because if there's one thing we know, then it is that Nintendo Switch has games, lots of them indeed. But joking aside, Nintendo has two aims this holiday season: sell as many 2019 Switch models as possible and wait until the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S and X are out before announcing anything, so that they can target the right price range when it's their time to strike back in 2021.
Just like what Nintendo did in 2014 in the West, before revealing the new 3DS on January 14, 2015. Very cheeky seeing that Majora's Mask 3D was revealed on November 5, 2014, pushing regular 3DS sales throughout the holiday in the West, before revealing the new 3DS with the XL Majora's Mask edition. And you know what? We might see this happen again in 2021, with the mighty return of a 30-minute Nintendo Direct and hopefully Zelda Breath of the Wild sequel. So let's get this thing sorted. The Nintendo Switch's strengths are many, and only a few things are holding it back from lasting until 2023, or maybe even 2024. The biggest of them is no doubt outdated specs. Maximum 900p, in some cases even 720p docked for demanding games. Those, frame rate issues and other technical hiccups have halted a perfect Switch experience, after the battery concern was sorted out with the 2019 revision of the base model. With a new generation of gaming aimed at nearly eliminating loading times, it has become more apparent than ever that something needs to be done to extend the life of the Nintendo Switch beyond 2022. A top model Switch that, much like the PlayStation 4 Pro did to the PlayStation 4 and the new 3DS did to 3DS, could extend the life cycle of the system. But how? By offering a more powerful alternative and delivering the experience we crave by playing Nintendo Switch's most ambitious upcoming titles. Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, Bayonetta 3, Metroid Prime 4 and Monolith Soft's next IP. Naturally, this hardware development was supposed to remain internal until the end of 2020, but as it is with Nintendo and everything besides the Zelda projects, things get leaked. In particular, by a number of outlets that reported on the matter after July 2020. It all started with the Taipei-based Economic Daily News that reported that suppliers are in the process of delivering new components for a new model or version of our favorite video game system for early 2021, and moreover that it could support 4K resolutions docked. The thread was then picked up by the renowned financial outlet Bloomberg, who reported extensively on the matter, supplying that it isn't a successor like the Switch was to the Wii U and 3DS, but rather an upgraded model of the Nintendo Switch, offering more computing power, potentially up to 4K upscaled resolutions when docked, and more importantly, an improved display when playing undocked, most likely 1080p. Bloomberg also reported that, quote, the release of the upgraded Switch could be coupled with or followed by a slew of games of Nintendo itself or related outside studios. Those games would address a wide range of players, from casuals seeking small dose of escapism to more devoted fans putting in marathon gaming sessions.
Indeed, Bloomberg has been very serious when it comes to the case of a new Nintendo Switch model, and in its next article back in September reported that, quote, several outside game developers, speaking anonymously as the issue is private, said that Nintendo has asked them to make their games 4K ready, suggesting a resolution upgrade is on its way. Yes, and there are more hints that something is on the new Nintendo Switch 2021 horizon. For instance, this tweet from the producing and publishing gaming company FDG Entertainment, which replied to the following tweet on September 8, quote, who knows, maybe Switch also has some next-gen hardware in the oven. Naturally, this could have been a random reply, but with the Bloomberg articles, much point to that Nintendo is working closely with the hardware partner Nvidia on delivering an improved Nintendo Switch graphical experience. In particular, since Nvidia has been working hard on more than just their insane RTX series for PCs. Specifically improving the handheld and mobile shield hardware, which has the same architecture as the Nintendo Switch. The result of this research is DLSS 2.0. An upscaler AI technology that could with less required performance deliver a clean upscaled 4K experience and make the 4K ready goal that Nintendo might be encouraging partners to aim for possible. For more in-depth details and comparisons, check out Digital Foundry's videos on the topic after this one. But let's assume that this technology makes its way into a new Nintendo Switch, or if you prefer Nintendo Switch Pro, then Nintendo's really playing with power that could bring their most anticipated games and sequels to a whole new level, and also maintain third-party support throughout the entire Switch generation. And as we saw in 2017 with the Nintendo Switch and 2019 with the Nintendo Switch Lite, with a new console or model comes a long list of prime AAA software from Nintendo's most beloved and best-selling franchises. One of the many third-party titles confirmed for 2021 is the graphics and effects pushing Monster Hunter Rise, a game running on the sophisticated RE engine, which definitely could benefit from a more powerful top-model Nintendo Switch. Fittingly enough, in an interview with Eurogamer from October, Capcom's Ryozo Tsujimoto stated this when asked about the new Nintendo Switch, quote, well, obviously we have no idea whatsoever what the plans would be in that direction, new Nintendo Switch. But even at the moment, you actually have two different Switch hardwares you're targeting. You've got the original Switch, which has the docking mode, so that's something we have already borne in mind to make sure that the game isn't making any undue assumptions on the hardware owned by the player. As to those kinds of plans on Nintendo's side, that being new Nintendo Switch, we can't speak to those at all. We're trying to make the game work as best as it can on whichever Switch you have. This answer could indeed have been a simple no, but it isn't, so something could be in store. And with all the reports from Taiwan, Bloomberg stating that developers are being told by Nintendo to prepare 4K ready games, and Nvidia working hard on cutting edge upscaling technology for mobile devices and a massive build-up of software, it seems that something is up. In other words, it could be time for another big hardware-software combo year from Nintendo in 2021. Following the 2-year pattern for new Switch models, where you have one slower year which focuses on one major release and put the pedal to the metal with your best software lineup in the years when you push new hardware. All aimed at pushing sales of new models, and in 2021 it could be time for a more powerful model, just in time for round 2 of Breath of the Wild and possibly even a new 3D Mario on the Nintendo Switch. After all, where can Nintendo deliver a better experience outside of the game itself? The hardware. With improved loading times, just as we saw for Breath of the Wild's and Switch's update, which allowed to overclock in specific sections so that loading times could be cut down severely. In 2019, that was a clear priority for Nintendo. We also know that Nintendo has been heavily held back on resolutions and frame rate. Outside of Smash with its stage-based design, very few titles have been able to hit 1080p natively and run in 60 frames per second.
Rule 1 of the researcher's code is to never give up.
Both Super Mario Odyssey and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild run in 900p docked on the Nintendo Switch, and only Super Mario Odyssey with its open but separated kingdoms is able to run in 60 frames per second in this resolution. In fact, Zelda struggles to maintain 30 frames per second in densely packed areas at 900p.
Oh yeah! Check it!
So no doubt, all of Nintendo's franchises can benefit from such a mid-gen boost. An improvement in performance for the sequels that could truly remove any compromises that might have held back Super Mario Odyssey and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Still, it is very unlikely that we'll hear anything about a revision or brand new top model from Nintendo until 2021. As we have already pointed out, Nintendo has promised to keep silent about the new model until the end of the 2020 holiday season. In other words, Nintendo will stick to their promise. And for a very good reason. They want to sell as many as possible of the original updated Switch model from 2019 and the Nintendo Switch Lite until December 31st, 2020. The latter is a strategy that we know quite well this year, since Sony and Microsoft waited until September, 2 months prior to the console launches, to reveal their prices and dates for the Xbox Series S and X and the PlayStation 5. They wanted to sell as many PlayStation 4s as possible to that point. Anyway, Nintendo doesn't really care about the console war between Sony and Microsoft, maybe with the exception of pricing for an upgraded Nintendo Switch. A more powerful Switch might cost more, though perhaps not, since if Nintendo is only updating the components inside and not the exterior, then we could still end up at $299 US. Why $299? As that would be a way of maintaining the base model Switch launch price throughout the entire generation through updates. In 2019 it was the better battery, and in 2021 it could be a better graphical performance. More value for $299 US. Also, a $399 US price could scare away consumers, especially since the Xbox Series S is sold for $299 US. And some may say that $299 US would then be too much for an upgraded Nintendo Switch. But can you take your Xbox Series S handheld? No, you can't. Overall, Nintendo has learned over the years how to price their hardware accordingly. Looking back at the successful launches of the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch Lite, we should not be afraid. It also should be noted that both of the Switch models launched with a Zelda title. Breath of the Wild released the same day as the Nintendo Switch, and Link's Awakening HD the same day as the Nintendo Switch Lite. Thus, it would be expected that the launch title for a new Nintendo Switch or a Nintendo Switch Pro should be Breath of the Wild 2, but we will explore more on that in our next video, and in the meanwhile we want to see your opinion in the comment section down below on a new Nintendo Switch model. Also, I'm pleased to announce that Nintendo will continue to provide his expertise in these technical and review-based videos on Switch games to the channel with some very great content on the way, so please give him a warm welcome in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to help us towards 300,000 subscribers. Press the notification bell and again for all notifications to not miss any of our Nintendo and new Nintendo Switch videos. A big thanks as always goes to all our patreon.com/commonaround patrons, you're amazing, and in particular our royal producer Charles Shash. Anyway, please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.